assertion. I wanted to focus on the issue of decent work because it's been the point has been made in the states many times that work is the way that you access other social rights, and obviously work is the key path out of poverty. And to say that, in essence, because work is viewed in the United States as an individual responsibility, it's left, supplying jobs or supplying employment is left almost entirely to the realm of the private sector. So that even employment policies that we've pursued have failed to, well, since the 80s, I guess, our employment policies have failed to pursue full employment. Earlier this year, according to the Department of Labor, there were 13 million people competing for about 2.7 million jobs. That means that if all the jobs are filled, we still had 10 million people looking for jobs that were not available, period. So the way the system is set up, there will always be people who are unemployed. And who do you think those people are? They're the people who are most vulnerable to discrimination, structural discrimination, employment discrimination, which despite many of our strong civil rights laws still exists. And then people who don't even have legal permits to work, undocumented immigrants in the United States. So the first point is that we have policies that do not provide enough jobs for everybody who is willing and able to work, period. And we need to fix that. The second point is that even the work that we do provide, like Radica mentioned, we're not talking about decent work. We're not talking about work that provides a living wage. We're not talking about work that provides benefits, paid sick leave. We don't have official maternity leave in the United States, official paid maternity leave in the United States, and so many mothers work without child care supports. So we're not even talking about jobs that ensure an adequate standard of living. And if our conversations or if thinking around economic or employment policy centered on human rights, we would be having these conversations. Let's see, so I want to talk about, so that's the first point, is that we don't have full employment policies and that we don't promote decent work as a matter of policy. The third point is that we actually have labor laws that specifically exclude people of color, women of color, in essence, because they exclude industries that are predominantly women of color, immigrants. I'm talking about domestic workers, agricultural workers, and home care providers, people who provide assistance for the elderly or persons with disabilities. So for example, our Federal Labor Standards Act, which guarantees a minimum wage and provides overtime pay, does not include domestic workers. Recently, through organizing of domestic workers and their own hard work over the last 10 years in New York State, we just got a domestic workers Bill of Rights passed that would provide for a minimum wage and basic labor protections for domestic workers. And so we've been in conversations, and we hope to continue those conversations with the Department of Labor to talk about maybe promoting that policy to other states in the United States. I just want to make one more point, really. And that is that when we do have economic development policies, a lot of times the needs of people of color, again, are not taken into consideration. In New York City, for example, almost all the real estate development projects that have been touted as promoting jobs and affordable housing have actually ended up displacing people in communities of color. Just last week, a group that we work with is 98% immigrants, Latino immigrants, who've been working near a stadium for the past 40 years, all own auto mechanic shops. shops or workers in auto mechanic shops are being displaced because of an economic development policy to redevelop the what used to be Shea Stadium where the Mets play. They're being given, there are 250 stores, 1,700 workers. They're being given a total of $3 million for relocation, which, if you do the math, is grossly inadequate. Not to mention that most likely many of these workers are undocumented. They don't have any real options in terms of finding other employment. So in a time of economic crisis, we have cities engaging in development programs or starting development programs that essentially deny people their source of livelihood. People who are vulnerable in the United States, and I mean, I keep repeating it, but I want this point to hit home, that if you're a poor person of color, if you're a woman in the United States, economic policies are not created with you in mind. For me, that's evidence that, one, we are not fully implementing CESR, which we have ratified, because there are protections there, there are provisions for equal enjoyment of economic, social rights, including the right to work. And if you have evidence, clear evidence, that not only do you have disparities in accessing work, not only do you have evidence of continued discrimination in the application or promotion process, but that you actually have government policies that affirmatively displace people of color from jobs, then something is not working in the laws that you already have in place. And I'll end on that note and to say that it's clear that our policy, the policy that we stated of making sure that we have laws that comply with treaties before we ratify them, is not the case for CERT. So I doubt that that would be the case for any of the other treaties that we have ratified.
Thank you, Adrian. You alluded to, and I wanted to give you all a chance to respond to this question before we open it up to the floor for a dialogue with all of you. But the U.S. delegation, Assistant Secretary Posner, in his response to the questions of economic, social, and cultural rights, acknowledged that our constitutional structure is set up to protect civil and political rights, and not so much economic and social rights. And you referenced, Adrian, some of the laws that exclude workers, in thinking about domestic workers, agricultural workers, and then the way the courts have interpreted those laws, I think, to further exclude workers, particularly when we're talking about workers who are undocumented and their ability to access remedies when their rights have been violated. But he indicated that the role, it was civil society's role in pursuing the democratic process to achieve economic and social rights. And that civil society had played a role in advancing policies and practices that advance economic and social rights. And then you mentioned, Adrian, also our obligations under CERN. And so in light of our obligations of the government under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights to at least work towards the full enjoyment of rights, and our obligations under the Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination to take affirmative measures that economic and social rights are enjoyed equally among all people, regardless of race, gender, national origin, other social status. What would your recommendations be as we look forward now to the adoption of the report in March by the United States, and moving forward, if we are going to move towards achievement of our obligations so that we can ratify the International Covenant on Economic and Social Rights, what would be sort of your recommendations for what the executive branch, at least,